And on that note, Drew, if you're ready to get started, I am so excited to have you. Creators Club is obviously so excited to have you. Thank you for your time. And thank you for everybody on the screen. This is such a cool opportunity. And so I'm going to let Drew introduce himself and give you some more info.
Yeah, first off, Abby, appreciate you having me. Abby is Digilogue family and also Patreon, so appreciate you supporting the Digilogue. From background about me, I'm first generation Filipino. I'm from New York City. Grew up in Queens, and yeah, I've been working in the industry for 12 years. I started a company called Blank Label back in 2009, and then it was a management company. Fast forward into like an agency. I had an opportunity to really help independent artists, DJs in New York City, especially when social media was still very new around 2009 to like 2016. In doing that, I was able to like find my niche, my superpower, the thing that I was able to add value to artists, and that was digital marketing. Just being able to experiment with things, especially when YouTube and Facebook and at the time like Vine and all those things were brand new. And then yeah, fast forward, I was able to consult other labels. I found an opportunity to work over at Def Jam, where I helped, break some artists there. One artist was Danny Lay, who's I was able to like help develop. And then fast forward.
1 second, Drew. I think you froze up on us. Hello, hello. Give me a thumbs up if you guys are good. Okay, cool.
Manager's low service.
Man, we were just getting good too. But shout out everybody on the screen. What's good? What's good? If you guys don't know me, I am Abby. I am the developer and founder of Creators Club. I'm so happy all of you guys are here. And this is truly just a start of what Creators Club is going to continue to offer artists. I definitely want to continue getting more industry professionals on here so you guys can ask your questions and get real insight and real answers from real people. At this point now, musicians especially are a super vulnerable population because the time has never been better for us to be musicians, quite honestly. And so it's just important that you guys are getting, the real information that you want. So Eduardo, you're on my screen, man. Welcome.
Yeah,
Give me a little, how are you? Yeah.
Nice to meet you. So I actually joined the Digilogue and I kind of got familiar with the community there. And then I kind of found this opportunity through one of my friends who's also here as well, Kenneth. And we're basically like, we started our own record label. It's called Tunnel Vision Productions. And right now we currently manage an artist. His name is Lou. And we're from the South Bronx, and we're just looking for different opportunities to connect with people and to just be able to get our story out there and to just show people what we want to, well, our talent that we hope manage and if we could work together or just things of that sort.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, shout out to the BX and congratulations to all that you're doing. I'm happy you found us.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is just a start. What's good,
Yep.
Drew? You're back in action. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I think I don't know, my network went out, so that's why I got my phone.
Okay, perfect.
I got too many tabs open probably. But yeah, apologies. But yeah, I was saying back in 2016, I started the Digilogue really just to help kind of like bridge the gap between artists, music creatives that wanted to have a starting point. I think often when I first started, I didn't know where to go. My family doesn't have any music background. And I think, being first generation Filipino, like the expectations was always to study, go to school, get like a corporate job and, pay back, support your family. But I think with me, I found that music was always something that I loved and I wanted to help artists. And that was always like my first why. So the Digilogue was a way to bridge that gap between people. And yeah, I was just excited just to have our first event, which only had 16 people, which was, a really special moment. And then we grew every event after that. Everyone wanted to see each other every month. Eventually we started doing meetups across the country, doing conferences, and then the pandemic hit. So, outside of education, networking, we decided to like focus on other programs like artist discovery, really helping artists with, independent artists with opportunities, whether it's playlists, editorial content, and then with music careers. I don't know if you guys have seen like music jobs that we post every week, internships, entry-level roles. So artist discovery, education, and music careers became like the focal point for the Digilogue, and we're 5 years in of programming. And then, community has always been my thing. And, I was at Alamo for about 2 years, so I'm doing Digilogue full time. And I also started a distribution company with my partner, JR, the key, called NPR. And that's where Money Long came into the picture, where we worked with her over the past 9 months. And just excited just to, be able to be an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. So I'm happy I was able to learn the corporate system and be able to see how the music business works from that standpoint. And then kind of take that experience to be able to apply it and all the things I've learned into the Digilogue as a business, also as, an entrepreneur as well. So that's a little short story of how I was able to kind of grow over the past 12 years and, what I'm working on now.
Amazing, amazing. And so can you give us a little bit more about the Digilogue and what artists can expect from the community?
Yeah, I think that for a lot of artists, I think for the artists in the chat as well, I think the biggest challenges are, one, just from an educational standpoint, to be able to understand this different facets, whether it's distribution, streaming, marketing, best practices, and how to onboard themselves onto platforms, whether it's Twitch, AudioMac. So that's a big focal point for us, is the education part. And also too, outside of putting your music out, is like support. So, you put a record out, obviously you have your core fan base and you put your music and your friends support it. But, artists need support outside of that to be able to grow their fan base. So as a community, we support, artists through our playlists. We have a partnership with AudioMac, which is an emerging streaming platform for playlists, which is called Rapper's Delight, which focuses on hip hop. Channel Purple, which focuses on R&B, Pop Hype, and then Global Goodies. And over the past year, we were able to accumulate over 1 million streams, and this is all attributed to like all independent artists, which is really cool. And all those streams are counted towards Billboard. And then from an editorial standpoint, we do an interview series called Now Playing, just to give context around a song. So for example, if you dropped a song and it's on the playlist, you have some context to talk about what the song is about. And that's an editorial content piece that we drop on our reels. And we have a series called Artists to Watch, where, really just to be able to talk about your project, your music, give more personality about you. We also have an editorial piece where you actually talk about what you do in the first 24 hours, like whether you wake up, once you wake up, whether you go to the studio, how you write. That's something that we're bringing back for artists to watch. So outside of music, our goal is really just to put more context around the artists, their music, their personality. And we've been able to see a lot of the artists grow within our community through these past 2 years, especially during the pandemic, because they didn't necessarily have resources. And then also we have a Twitch channel where, especially when it was challenging for artists to perform, to be able to perform and live stream. And I think that was particularly important for those that didn't necessarily have an opportunity to tour. So we had to adjust, but I think the pandemic was a silver lining. It was a blessing in disguise as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And I'm sure you agree, like the one thing that I'm always preaching is that as a musician, you are so much more than that. It's really, you're an entrepreneur. And so having that education and having that little bit of background, even if it's foundational, can really wrap your head around how you approach this as a business, how you approach your brand as a business.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the theme of today's meeting is digital marketing. So when it comes to artists who are just emerging, what do you think that they should focus on in digital marketing? Is it social media? Is it press? What things actually make a difference for an emerging artist?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think for me, the way I always approach marketing is in different stages. One is to understand who your audience is. I think more often than not, when people putting their music out, they don't really look at the data. And I think being able to understand your data, both from a digital standpoint.
Oh, you muted yourself.
So no, my bad. I was saying it's being able to understand your data and your audience. So always start with that. Because if you don't know who you're talking to, how are you supposed to market to them, right? So I always start with that. So understanding who your audience is, who your fans are. The second stage is really just to understand, outside of your followers, who is your core fan base? Who are your super fans, right? And you'll be able to notice that, you know, from the people that retweet your content, repost your content regularly, that, you know, comment on your on your posts. So if you're able to like really put together like a list, whether it's like an email list or like a group chat, you know, it's super important to understand that, because when I look at artists, 50% of their music consumption is really driven by super fans, and that super fan percentage usually is about 10 to 15%. So if you could really identify who those super fans are, you'll know that you'll have like a small like super fan core base that can help drive your music, drive your merch, drive your campaigns, especially early on. So like I said, understanding who your audience is, knowing how to like identify who your super fans are. And then once you do that, I think the biggest thing, you know, and this is always talked about, is, you know, investing in yourself and investing in your content. If you had like $1,000 in terms of a budget, some people are like, oh, well, I want to put $500 towards advertising. I want to put $500 towards marketing. No, I want you to put $1,000 in towards, you know, 10 pieces of content, right? Whether it's like, you know, 2 music videos that you can probably shoot on your iPhone, that's super easy, or like BTS content of you being able to create that music, because at the end of the day, content is what's going to really trigger the algorithm in terms of music streams. Because, you know, traditionally, I think with artists and labels, they would invest so much into a music video, but it's really less about that big moment when you put out a music video, but more so about all the smaller moments leading into it with the content you're putting out, and all the other smaller moments that you're creating content after the release, right? Because you have to be reminded about what's coming up. And then once your music is out, to be reminded that, hey, my song is out, and to be reminded back that you want to drive people back to your music. Because at the end of the day, the biggest challenge that we're facing as marketers, as artists, as fans, is the attention economy, right? We have only 8 to 10 hours a day that we're like actually active. So within that percentage of that time, how much time are you putting towards being able to listen to music, right? Maybe it's like a small percentage. So, you know, you may not see a post that you had posted only once. That's why the repetition and content is so important, especially to really build that consistency with your fan base. So going back to my point earlier, understanding who your fans are, who your super fans are, and then you know, being able to really build a consistent content strategy where you're literally just being able to like put content in front of your fans consistently. And I think that's what's the biggest thing that I've learned, especially working with Money Long, is that I don't know if you've been able to tap into her content, but we also, you know, want to galvanize you know, the people that post her, you know, her content. So that goes back to the whole super fan relationship, right? Whether it's like, you know, Abby posting a video of the song, or, you know, people in this chat, it's about really kind of being able to like say like, hey, you're part of my growth, you're part of this. And I think that sometimes artists tend to be so you know, really just particular about what their page looks like. And I think it's less about that anymore, because it's more about DIY, especially on TikTok. It's like less about the aesthetics. It's more about just being able to put content out. So that's my 2 cents on that.
100%. And I think that there is a huge difference in artistry now in terms of what your image is and what your brand is. Your image is that look, your image is your aesthetic and how you want to portray yourself visually. And your brand is really that story, right? What is going to connect you to your audience and what your story is. And that's what indie artists should be focusing on at
Yeah,
first?
yeah, definitely. And it's not just about being active when, you know, you want to put music out, right? And it's the same thing that we apply when we have a relationship with a friend. It's like you're gonna only hit them up when you need something. So, you want to manage that relationship. And I think for a lot of artists, there's the argument that, well, you're just putting out microwave music just to put out. But I think, it really depends on what your goals are, right? As an artist, do you want to be just an artist for the sake of being an artist, just to put music out as a hobby, like, or do you want to really build this into a business where you actually want to pay for yourself, make this a livelihood? So I think that's something that you have to distinguish as an artist. And if those shared values align with more of like, I want to make this a livelihood, you have to play within the system that works, right? It's putting content out and being consistent and putting in that work versus like, hey, I'm just gonna put my music out and just, expect my fans to like engage with it without me actually putting that effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so with that being said, are there any kind of marketing things that artists should avoid making?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of I would say no's. I think one, being able to just pay for a playlist. I would never do that. I think editorial playlisting doesn't really help you unless you actually build momentum leading into it. For example, if you're an emerging artist unknown and you paid like, let's say $5,000 to just get on Rap Caviar, just imagine you're on like this playlist with Little Baby and people are just going to skip right over you because they don't know who you are. And you also have to think about it too. The people that are following these playlists are more casual listeners. So if you're not someone who's familiar, it's not going to necessarily help you as an artist. You want to kind of build into that. And I think streaming is really about building your audience through these smaller playlists, what they call feeder playlists, smaller playlists that kind of like help you build your audience there. So by the time you build your streaming audience, once you get to like a Rap Caviar or like one of these bigger Spotify playlists, you have an audience that knows who you are and can stream your playlist. Stream your music. So there's that. I think also there's an argument around like, investing into influencer campaigns, especially for like independent artists, because it's a lot of money. My point is that, if you have a network of people that have an audience and figuring out a way to be able to leverage that, I think that's one way to kind of bypass that. But I'd rather put, if I had $1,000 budget, towards my content versus an influencer campaign, only because you don't own the content, because content that you own is evergreen and you can always repurpose it. Mind you, the content that the influencer posts might post it once and then probably will delete it at some point. So, I mean, I think once you have a bigger budget, obviously you want to amplify the record, you want to put some money into an influencer campaign, sure. But at the end of the day, the artist is the influencer, you're the influencer. So you want to build your audience first before anything else, because you're the one that's driving the content, you're driving the campaign, you're driving the trend. So there's that. And I think also too, approaching advertising less as a marketing campaign, but more as something that's supplementary. I want to default to advertising as the marketing campaign. You got to put out content. You got to put out creative activations. Because advertising at the day is just to build awareness. It's not necessarily going to help you convert as a fan into a user to listen to your music. It's more to be like, all right, yeah, the song is out, but cool. But if I'm looking at native content that you're posting regularly, I'm actually going to be engaging with you. I have something to buy into. So that's something that I would note as well.
Yeah, I love that. That is all incredible insight. I'm here in the back of my head, like, okay, no. That's awesome. Okay, so my next question is, you've obviously worked with some of the most successful artists in the game, and I'm sure maybe some artists that were not able to break. And so what are the significant differences you see between artists who reach that level and who don't?
Yeah. Well, I think there's incredible music across artists. So I'm gonna give you different case studies. I think with Danny Lay, for example, I like to say she had music that definitely like helped connect with the internet for sure. And the biggest thing about her was that she was able to be herself online, and she understood digital marketing. She understood to be able to engage with her fans, to repost. So she was never shy about, taking ideas from us to be like, hey, let's do this with fans. Let's do like an IG live with fans, especially while I'm on tour, or let's do like a private group chat with like super fans on my Instagram. Like she was super open to that. And I think the idea of back in the day where like if you were like the Weeknd when you first started, where you're like this mysterious character, it just doesn't necessarily work as it you know as it did 11, 12 years ago. Fans want to know who you are. They want to feel like they're connected with you, and I think that's what Daniel Lay did really well. I think from a music standpoint, like for example, Rod Wave, he wasn't necessarily the most social artist, but his music was just, it was just so heartfelt. So the product obviously has to be there, where like, I think the music has to, really surpass the test of time. And I think with his music, especially during the pandemic, it spoke about pain and talked about real things. And that's how I was able to connect with people. I think for the artists that, like I said, that are not putting in the work as far as like, being active on the platforms that will help them, like TikTok or like YouTube, you're not going to be able to move forward. And I get it. It was very challenging during the pandemic, especially for artists, because one, you're dealing just with a pandemic as a person. There's a mental health aspect as well. So I understand those challenges. So it's a delicate process when working with artists. But for those that are able to kind of like overlook, really just overlook that and just get the job done, we've seen artists be successful. And, Money Long is an example of that. But every artist is different. But at the end of the day, there's like 60,000 songs uploaded on Spotify every day. If you want to be part of that 99% that just want to put up music, that should be your goal. Like you shouldn't always look at like the Drakes or like the Ariana Grandes of the world and think that's what success is. I think if you have a core fan base, if you're able to like, pay for your studio time for yourself, if you're able to like be self-sufficient, if you're able to pay for your team, like I see that as success. Like, it's not always about the glitz and the glamour. And I think people see, these artists with these lavish lifestyles, and there's so much more to that. And a lot of those artists are not as happy as you think they are. So I think you just have to be realistic what your goals are as an artist, and kind of define like what success is for you.
Love it. Love it. What are so I know the chat is super excited to start asking you questions. So I'm gonna hit you with the last question I have, and then I'm gonna open up the floor for them.
Cool.
So my last question is, what are your 3 best marketing tips for our members?
Yeah. Well, one, I think for the independent artists, right? I think if you have music that you're planning to put out over the next 6 to 12 weeks, you should start teasing it. And if you can figure out what those timestamps are that work through the fan engagement, I think that's something to identify. So you should be teasing out your music with like your lyrics, and really kind of identify, all right, cool, like what section of the song are my fans really leaning into? Because I think often, and this goes back to the whole idea of like, oh, well, this feels like the record, or this has to be the single. I'm like, well, you won't know unless you like let your fans decide. And I think there's always that argument about artists like, well, this is my art, I don't let fans choose. But if, like I said, it goes back to my point where I think fans are going to really dictate what they want to listen to. And if this is the record that they're leaning towards, I think this is the record that you want to put the most effort towards. So I would do that for sure, especially when you're teasing music. I think we always kind of approach music as like a singles approach, like this is a single, this is a single, but you could put multiple, snippets out and kind of see what the fans are like gravitating towards too, and that's okay. Like I said, let's kind of like think out of the box a bit, because you don't have to be so like regimented about releases. you're independent. You know, there's no like restrictions, to be honest. I think there's that part of being creative. I think also too, from a marketing standpoint, is just like, you know, going back to my point about super fans, like how can you galvanize your super fans early, especially during a release? Like, what can you create some type of premium experience before the project drops? Because, like I said, they're your first line of support. So if you can figure out a way for them to either listen to the music, you know, invite them to a studio session, get them on a Zoom call or something, get them early to be like, hey, this is what's happening. This is the game plan. You know, I need everybody to like change their avatar to this, that, and the third. Like, really have them like part of this like campaign. I think could really help you as an artist, because you have like 50 to 100 people that are gonna like be your evangelist. You know, so I think that's number two. And then I think number three, like I said, going back to my point about, you know, just consistent, you know, strategy with content, is that not being so attached to like, oh, this content is not going to work, this benefit. It's test things out, right? You just never know what's going to work. And if you find something that does, you know, lean into it. I always like to say, you could delete that video. It's okay. It's not the end of the world, you know? So I think we're so precious with like what we put out. And I think, you know, for artists be like, hey, you know, it's have a short-term memory. It's like, all right, cool. It bricked as far as engagement, on to the next thing, you know? So I think those are the three things. Definitely, you know, teasing snippets, multiple snippets early, kind of like galvanizing your super fans early, especially before release, and also teasing different types of content and finding the thing that works the best.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, cool. So thank you, Drew, for all of that information. That was seriously so helpful to me, and I know everyone else on the screen. So now I'm gonna open it up. So if you guys have a question, we'll start off. If you're on the screen, raise your hand, and I'll kind of moderate the conversation between you both. Eduardo, you're good to go.
All right. Hey, Drew, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. Abby, thank you for inviting us and setting this up. So Drew, I wanted to ask you, where would you suggest starting in terms of learning how to best target ads, and in terms of like TikTok and YouTube shorts, since those are like kind of like the newest platforms that are the most streamed at the moment, I would say.
Most used, yeah, for sure. So I think, for example, let's say you're on TikTok, right? Or your artist is on TikTok and you're posting a bunch of content. And then you see a content piece that like probably has like the most views, right? I think the cool thing about TikTok is that you can obviously run ads. So you could do two things. One, you could boost for awareness just to build like more eyes on the video, or two, direct fans towards a platform. I think once you have a better understanding of if let's say, for example, if you're more Apple leaning, or if you're more Spotify leaning as an artist, I think if you're hip hop R&B, it's mostly Apple. You want to drive people towards your song. So, you know, find the most engaged video, for example, on TikTok, and like, all right, cool, we're gonna like put some money behind it, maybe like $100, and then let's drive that video. So when people discover it, they listen to the song. All right, 15-second snippet. How do I go to the song? And you want to drive people towards that song, to the specific platform. I wouldn't necessarily drive them to like, you know, for a lot of artists, they'll have like what they call a smart URL, whether you have like Spotify, Apple. I'll drive them directly towards the streaming platform. So it's like directly towards Apple, directly towards Spotify. And like I said, most hip hop and R&B artists are more Apple leaning within the US. So depending on the genre.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Porter.
Hi, Drew. Thank you for taking the time. I'm
Hey.
Porter. Hi. I just had some questions. So, at least for me personally, I'm having the biggest struggle of I'm releasing like a EP. It's my first EP, and I'm really trying to get things going. Like you said, I post on social media consistently. It's like, short, it's quality. What do you think, at least for the artists you've been around and helped develop, how did you get the biggest success in the sense of switching from, hey, they have a small online presence, or hey, they just exist online, to hey, they exist in person, and start like with small show bookings? Or how did you get them to be full-time working artists?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to look at artists in terms of region, right? So I always like to say is like focus in your hometown or within your core network first. Usually that's where artists tend to like break, from what artists I've seen. So for example, like Ra, like his biggest breakout moment was around St. Petersburg. That's where he's from, Tampa, and like the northern Florida region. So like for example, like where are you based?
I'm based out of San Diego, California.
All right, yeah. So I think around those surrounding, especially in Southern California, obviously there's more local venues. Would you say that your base is in San Diego or within California, or
Yeah,
followers or
definitely San
friends?
Diego. Like it's such a big county. I'd say more North County, which is like closer to like Irvine, Orange County. But I mean, downtown San Diego, where like a majority of it is, I'd be closer.
So, so I would approach it both from a micro and macro approach. I think micro, really looking at your town, your city, your network of friends, your surrounding cities around that, because it's going to be spreading word of mouth, right? And then looking at your Spotify data, your Apple data, and kind of seeing like what are those secondary, tertiary markets, whether it's like most likely it's going to be those bigger cities, whether it's LA or New York, sometimes the smaller cities, you have to look at the numbers. But seeing like, all right, can I do a one-off show here? Do I have, am I able to galvanize fans here? Um, so that's why I think the stuff is super important. And then also figuring out within your super fans, within that core group, do you have enough fans to like put together a show in a different town, outside of your, San Diego? That's why I always like, hey, like, all right, cool, you got 10,000 followers, but who's like your diehards though? You know, and do you have an email list? Like, do you have a way to incentivize them to like come out, or like, are you gonna give them like a free tee, like a special T-shirt? Like,
Mhm.
um, I think that's super important to like recognize and create that fandom, because like I said, you'll have your
Mm.
casual followers, but if you get that, it takes either it's the first 20, first 30, but once you have a super fan, you got a super fan for life.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
That's very true. Very true. Serena, you had your hand up next.
Hi, I'm not at home. So sorry if the Wi-Fi is just really choppy. I just want to say thank you to Abby and Drew, both of you guys, for putting this on. I am like learning so much. But okay, I put the question in the chat, worst case if you can't understand what I'm saying. But I would just like love to know what like digging into the data looks like for you. Like what metrics are you looking at? What sites are you using? Because I agree that's super important. I just don't know what I'm doing. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think for artists, for sure, this is data that you have access to already. If you're an artist or your artist manager, normally you have your YouTube metrics for music videos and all that. And then in terms of streaming, in terms of like audio streaming, you have Spotify for artists, Apple Music for artists. So the data I'm looking at is more so like the day-to-day streams, how the record is performing. For example, on Apple, like are people Shazamming the record? You could see that in your data. What are my top markets outside of just countries? Like, what are the cities that are listening to like this song? And then looking at like really just if you look at graphs, like looking at there's like a slope, right? If you're seeing something start to move a little bit, all right, well, move to maybe 100 streams, not bad. All right, what's driving this? Did I post something today that helped drive this? So it's kind of looking also at your socials, and this is really where digital marketing comes in to see if something actually like triggered that. I like this other platform which really helps kind of like group data across streaming and socials called Chartmetric. There's also an artist like discount that you're able to like pay on a monthly basis, but Chartmetric is a great platform. And yeah, it's really just for me. That's something that that I do daily, especially before I start my day, is looking at like, all right, what's happening? I'm looking at streaming data, and really seeing if something is moving, especially if you see, like, for example, if you have a video on TikTok or like Reels that's really engaging and actually like going, doing more views than the usual, you can see a correlation into streaming more often than not.
Thank you so much. Super helpful. Appreciate it.
Awesome question. I love that. All right. So in order, we have Angela, then Shamar, then Zoe. So Angela, go.
Hey everyone. Hi Drew. My name is
Hey.
Angela. Okay, so I've been really debating on this lately because I have 2 new songs coming out pretty soon, and I've been approached by a few marketing agencies. One of them is Liberty PR, and then there's like Eclair something. Do you think it's worth investing into these marketing agencies to do all the work for you? Like, is it effective? Do they give the best results or not? And also it's because I would ask a lot of indie artists like around that I know online, and they would be like, oh no, it's not worth it. They're not going to do anything. It's not. So I don't know, like, what is your perspective on that? Like, how would
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I would really approach an agency once you start to build momentum or you start to put some music out as well.
Okay.
Because you also have to understand they have to have something to work with as well, right? So if you're able to build some momentum with like a few releases on your own, I think it's important to kind of understand, all right, cool. Like, I have a better understanding of who my market is, who my audience is. Because you really want to approach a marketing agency as like a partner. Like, hey, I know who to target, like I know who to talk to. I just need someone else just to do it. But if you're not necessarily in that space yet, I think it's important for you to figure that out within your first 2 releases or the releases that are coming after, because they have to do a lot of that figuring out first, especially in the beginning. So I think for you to like kind of go through that process, the exploratory stage where like you're really identifying who your fans are, going to my previous point, and then your super fans, like really putting that work in, where it's like, all right, I'm in a position now where like I have a really understanding, how to put my music out. I have a cadence. I'm all just really need to partner with an agency just to really ramp this up and really get as many eyeballs as possible. Then I think that's when you should partner up.
So like, but do you think like it's worth it, or that it's not like guaranteed the results that they give, and like it's just best that you do it all yourself, even if you're building the momentum?
Yeah, I think it depends on like the record itself. For example, if you have a song where you're like, I've exhausted all my resources in terms of like where this can go, I mean, you have to see like where they can help you. Is it like relationships, whether it's like an editorial play, right? Like, all right, cool, the song is streaming XYZ a day. I need to get on these, on these smaller playlists. Does the agency have like relationships with digital partners? Are they able to like get you playlisted on TikTok, or are they able to get you opportunities with these different digital partners? So it's trying to see like where they can add value that you haven't necessarily had support in or resources for. There's a lot of stuff that I'm saying now that you can do just in the beginning, but there's going to be a certain point where like, all right, if you feel like there's a song that you really want to triple down on and put your most effort, like I think that's where you can add a marketing agency to help kind of ramp that up and get more eyeballs. Because like for example, if they have like an international arm, and you're like more of a pop leaning artist, just hypothetically, you want to expand to these other markets like the UK, Asia. So they may have reach there and you don't. So it's just trying to figure out what the goals are for that song that might be reactive.
Okay.
Drew, and if I could add something too.
Okay.
And like just on a super foundational level, Angela, if you don't have like a person that you are talking to and building a relationship with, and it's kind of like webby and you're talking through email and you don't know who you're talking to, that's usually a bad sign, right? Because people, like Drew said, it's going to be more of a partnership where people should be hands-on in your music. It shouldn't be so much like you know, have a $1,000 deposit and we'll run your ads for you unless, you know, you're at that level. But for somebody who's emerging, you definitely want to build the relationships with your marketing agencies, with your press agencies, because that's only going to further your network. And then of course, that's how you know that that connection is real. And maybe when you're not even seeing those results, now you have a real relationship with someone and you can say, hey, what's going on, or what can I do better?
Yeah, of course. I always make sure like we get on Zoom sessions. I've done Zoom calls, but if anything's like sketchy, then I would notice it. I wouldn't like put in the deposits. So I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think also being able to go through those exercises and marketing yourself, you're also able to audit and check them, because you know they'll come, you know, agencies like to like fluff up things like, oh, you have a million impressions, this, then a third. I'm like, well, I'm not seeing my streams move, so this is not moving. So like you guys like, well, like we got a bunch of retweets. I'm like, but my streams are not moving though. So it's you have an opportunity to really check them, especially if you know how to market yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you for the question. Okay, up next we had, I'm sorry, I don't know if it was Zoe or Shamar. I think it was Zoe and then Shamar. Then we got Kenneth and Joel. So Zoe, go ahead.
Hi everybody, hope you're doing well. My question is, what are some ideas you have for incentivizing people to give you their data? Because, for example, you know, when you have businesses and they're having like, they have like a kind of value add. If you give me your email, if you give me, you know, whatever, I'll give you this free PDF or whatever. And that kind of is a more of a reason to give personal data. And especially when everybody has your email these days, like what are some things that you can do as an artist outside of, because social media, you know, the algorithm is kind of tough, so you want to own your own data. So what are some value adds that you can give to people, especially in the beginning?
Yeah, I always like to reverse the question. Like, for example, you, and this is for the room as well. Like, why do you subscribe? Like, what's your favorite newsletter? Do you have a newsletter you subscribe? Okay, Trapital. Why do you subscribe to them?
I like the analyses he has. Like he does like music breakdowns, and I find them interesting and like entertaining.
Cool. And what's another thing about him? He's consistent, right?
Yeah.
So those are some of the value adds that he provides you with data, he gives you education, and he's consistent. So if we were to reverse that from an artist standpoint, why should I subscribe to an artist newsletter, right? I think there's always this thing about fandom where like artists, you know, fans always want to be the first person to get something. So if you're part of this newsletter, before an announcement, before I post anything, I'm gonna like make sure my newsletter, my email group, my army, whatever I call my fans are, will get access or that announcement. I think that's one. I think two, being that consistent with in terms of updates. I think more often we have social posts to update us on, you know, this is what's happening as far as artists, what they're doing, what music they're putting out, where they're going. But if you give your fans a clear idea of like, hey, over the next month, I'm going to be doing this, then, and third. I'm going to be pulling up in New York City. I'm going to be posting this, you know, I'm doing this like small performance, this, then, and third. Like they have like a roadmap of what's happening. And you don't necessarily have to announce that on socials. You can actually just only update them within this newsletter. Obviously, there's all this exclusive content, whether it's like snippets to like unreleased music, BTS photos from you in the studio. You know, people just want to just feel like they're part of something special. And that just goes back to the whole idea of like scarcity. You know, why do we pay a premium for like limited edition shoes? Why do we pay a premium for limited edition hats or whatever limited edition is, or tickets? Like, because it's limited. So if you can give them something that's limited and at a premium, you'll be able to create something that's a special experience for them. For example, if you're like part of this newsletter, you'll be able to like have like, you'll be able to have access when I perform. We'll do like a you know, like let's say a meet and greet only for those that are just only for those that subscribe. Or maybe you give them a discount for like your merch. So there's so many things you can do to incentivize your fans, but it's really being able to kind of understand who those fans are, what kind of like access do they like, and getting feedback from that. And once you get an idea of what that is, you can like offer them regularly. I want to do it like every week as far as like, here's a discount, here's this. You want to just kind of do it monthly because you don't want to like, I like to say, you don't want to like lose the value of what you're offering, right? Especially when you're creating that fandom within your newsletter, within your super fans. So I would do it once a month, like, because you also don't want to spam their emails as well. So, it's like, all right, once a month, I'm gonna get this email from Zoe. This is, I get all these discounts. This is what's happening. I also got a shout out from her on socials, like, like making sure that it's personal too. So a lot of fun stuff you can do with your newsletter.
That's really good. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. And just so we have a good idea, we're only going to take these 3 questions. I think that'll take us right up to the 7 p.m. mark. So if we don't get to your question, make sure you follow Drew, follow the Digilogue, DM. But Shamar, you are up next.
Hey everyone, how y'all doing? I got a
Good.
question.
man.
I got a question for you as far as like trying to find ideas. What do you like? How would I put it? So how do you go about for looking ideas when like marketing for like a certain artist?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, outside of the music, I always look at like, what their interests are. For example, there's this one artist I'm working with right now. She played basketball. And we have a song called Drinks on Me, and shots are in the lyrics. So like just kind of incorporating, things within the music, things that they're interested in. And I think being able to kind of tie that in with some type of fan engagement opportunity is like you can be creative like that, right? That's just like an idea exercise right there. Like I'm looking at the lyrics, I'm looking at like what her interests are. How do we tie these things together? That's just one idea. I think culturally, I always like to say, what is happening today? I think, for example, with Gunna, it was about pushing P. That was a thing for a moment. I remember like people were like were stepping on crates at one point. How do you take advantage of these moments and kind of put them in your strategy if it is on brand to like tie in your music or like jump on that trend? I think on Twitter, for example, being part of the conversation. Sometimes, I think with Twitter, like, yes, I think we all share our opinions, but like we don't necessarily join the conversation often. So if there's something that means something to you and that's something that's moving, like why not like join that conversation as well? Like, so it's not just about posting your music or updating on like what you're doing every day, but actually like really like showing that you have an opinion and being part of something outside of your own conversation with your fans. But those are just ideas. Like I like to piggyback on things already happening. For example, it's like March Madness, right? So if you have some type of interest in sports, like I think, you can create some type of challenge with your fans, right? Maybe there's like, for example, I got 16 songs, I'm gonna do like a bracket challenge, right? So each song I'm gonna do like a side by side, you guys vote. And I can do like, something where like fans decide what my next single is through this like bracket challenge because it's March Madness. That's just an idea. What else is happening? Top Boy just came out on Netflix. Maybe you could do like a Top Boy inspired playlist because everyone's watching it, and then obviously put your music as part of it. Like, there's so many things, like really seeing what's happening in the world outside of like the negative stuff, like really to incorporate because that's what people are talking about at that moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Love that. All right, Kenneth, up next.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hey.
I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity, and like it's so informative, and I'm new to the Digilogue, so I just want to say happy belated, Drew. I know it's your birthday a couple of days ago.
Oh, appreciate it, man.
For sure. Thank you also, Abby. But my question is, when you have your core fan base, how would you what advice do you give us to go to the next level and like to branch out to I guess not your core group, but like people that should be your fans kind of thing. And I say that with like just like the background of I'm from the South Bronx, so It's like,
Mhm.
and you from New York too, so you know, like there's different sounds and different energies. So
Mhm.
what advice did you have to like elevate from your Supercore fans into like the general fans?
Yeah, so if you can find emerging artists, especially as you're looking through your data, and for example, what's one city that outside of New York that you're a fan of, or like you would want to collaborate with an artist from?
Let's say Chicago.
Yeah, Chi-Town. So obviously drill is pretty big, obviously. But finding an artist there that you feel like aligns with you and someone that's emerging where you could be like, yo, this is I got a crazy audience in the Bronx, in New York. You got someone that's shy. How do we like collaborate on building our audience with each other? Either I jump on a record or you jump on one of my joints. And like I've always seen that with artists that have been successful. You'll look at like key markets like, all right, I'm gonna do a remix with this artist from the UK because people have been streaming my music there. Like, but I'm gonna find someone that's dope, that's up and coming because I think for features, we always look for the biggest artists because you feel like they're gonna like give you the most value. But why don't you do something like here's a value exchange. We're not going to like exchange any money, but we're going to exchange audiences and leverage each other's reach, and then we
Right.
both get the benefit, right? So I would approach it that way. I mean, that's something that's super important too, especially building your network. For example, because if you get to a position where you're touring and you already put together songs in Chicago, like you already have an audience there because of the artists you collaborated with.
For sure. For sure. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gems. Drew is dropping only gems today. Okay, so last question we got Joel.
Hi guys, thank you so much for taking my question.
Hello.
I just released my first song on Monday, and
Congrats.
I thank you, thank you. It's very nerve-wracking, but I'm excited, but I'm just kind of all over the place, a little overwhelmed because I don't feel like I have a core audience. And I've just been trying to take notes, figure out, should I reach out to people through DM? Should I do the thing where you just kind of, send these kind of canned DM messages to people, kind of, letting them know who you are and that you want them to potentially listen to your songs. And then I get other artists telling me, you should really put out a video for this. But again, it's like, it's my first song and it's not that I don't have a video idea. I just didn't know if I was, trying to do too much or, even if what, like the way that I was going about trying to find a core audience, like, am I doing it correctly? Or is there a way that you would recommend doing it that would maybe help me
Yeah.
find those people easier?
Yeah. I mean, I always like to say, so where's your biggest audience visit right now? Is it Instagram? Because that's where most artists are, would find their audience,
I would say it's
or TikTok.
kind of, I would say maybe it's Instagram only because I think that I have a more of an understanding how to use Instagram than I do on TikTok.
Okay. And then as your followers, are these followers, do they know you as an artist or do they know you as just for who you are? Like, do you have, or is this kind of a new introduction to them?
So it's kind of a new introduction, but most of the people that follow me are people that I knew from a different page that I had when I was more geared towards fashion, and they kind of just follow me over here, which I'm grateful for, but I'm not sure if they're necessarily my core audience.
Okay. Well, I think there's opportunity here, right? I would probably approach it over the next 3 months where you really get to explore that. Obviously, Instagram you mentioned is your biggest audience, so it's I think within your content, I wouldn't necessarily post your music as like, hey, I'm gonna like drive this to them and make sure like, I'm gonna like push it and promote it every day, but I think it's important to kind of like mass that content with the music through other interests that you have. So outside of fashion, that people that follow you, like, what are the other things that you do, or like that you like?
Other things that I like kind of consist of I really am into like 90s TV shows and just kind of 90s fashion and music, all pretty much anything 90s.
Okay,
So
I like
yeah.
that. Okay, how about this? So, obviously you're into the fashion space. So why don't you do like some type of like weekly segment where like, maybe it's like 90s like throwback outfits, but putting your song around it. Because you're just like literally just like doing like different fits. And why don't you post that on your reels and also TikTok? Get all like the key trending hashtags that are on TikTok, for example, because you could find that on the For You page, and then really see like, what people are engaging you for. They'll probably engage you because of the fashion, because that's a bigger audience to like really tap into. It's a niche audience that you can really help kind of like convert into your music. But you can put your music around that. And also, I would also test out different segments of your song that you feel like are reacting. So, maybe test like the verse, whether it's the hook or whether it's the outro, just trying to figure out like what section of the song people are gravitating towards. And once you find that piece, I would use that segment of the song and just repeat it with that 90s fashion series.
Okay. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Okay, well, that brings us to right on 7 p.m. on the dot. So, Drew, I want to say thank you for all of this information, all of this insight, and of course, your time. To the members, thank you for coming. Thank you for your questions. It's honestly been so valuable. And be sure that you're following Creators Club, you're following the Digilogue. Artists, remember, connections, relationships, and community will seriously be the foundation of your success. So join all of these communities while you can, participate, introduce yourself, and network with one another. I don't have anything else. Drew, do you have anything?
No, I just want to say thank you. I mean, it's I think the artist space and music space is it's very personal to everyone that's in this room. So I appreciate you guys taking time. Just know that you guys are at the very early parts of your career, but regardless of where you are, there's great communities that Abby's a part of, that, with the Creators Club, there's a Digilogue. There's a community here to help you and guide you through that process. We don't necessarily have all the answers, but it is a starting point. And I can only speak from experience, but I can say that I'm excited to see where each of y'all go. I'm excited to see where your journeys go. And like I said, feel free to follow me. I want to follow you back and kind of share what you guys are working on. Follow the Digilogue. We also just launched our Patreon as well, for like more premium content. But just happy to be here, and it was great questions, and happy to connect.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Drew. I'll talk to you soon. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Peace.
You too.